The elevator doors slid open on the 18th floor, and the first thing Mark saw was my name on the wall. Bennett Design Group. Cut into pale marble in letters as tall as his hand. He read it once, then he read it again, slower, the way you read a word in a language you almost recognize. The girl at the front desk stood up before we'd taken 3 steps. "Good evening, Miss Bennett." A small thing. A polite thing. But I felt Mark go still beside me, the way a man goes still when the floor he's standing on turns out to be something other than floor. "Evening, Anna," I said. "Has everyone gone home?" "Just Grace, still in her office. She's expecting you." Mark turned in a slow circle in the middle of that marble lobby, taking in the windows full of city lights, the long quiet hallway, the logo glowing on the wall. "Claire," he said, and his voice came out thin. "What is this? Whose office is this?" I didn't answer right away. I let him keep turning. When I finally walked him into the corner office with the floor-to-ceiling glass and the whole evening city spread out below it, when I rested my hand on the back of my own chair and said the words out loud. "This is my company. I built it. All of it." I watched his face do something I will never forget as long as I live. First it fell open with shock. His mouth actually came apart. And then, for one bright childish, he laughed and reached for me like a kid who'd just been handed a present too big to hold. "You're kidding me." "My God, Claire, my wife is going to own a business?" And then the present got too big. And something behind his eyes changed. The laugh drained out of him. His gaze stopped sweeping the room with wonder and started measuring it, counting the windows, counting the floors, counting. "Wait," he said. "How many studios is a chain?" Exactly. That was the moment, right there. The man I had almost married, the man whose name I'd already half tried on, standing in the office I'd bled 12 years to build, and the only question in his heart was how much it was worth and how fast he could get his hands on it. To understand why I was standing there watching him count, I have to take you all the way back to a doorbell I never quite got the chance to ring. A month before that elevator. I drove out to a gated community on the far side of the lake, where the houses sit behind tall fences and the lawns look ironed. I had a bouquet of wildflowers in my hand. Daisies and cornflowers. The kind that grow in roadside ditches, wrapped in a thin paper ribbon. I had a cotton dress I'd bought off a clearance rack, almost no makeup, and a worn-out handbag I'd borrowed from my neighbor. Accident. None of it was an accident. I'd put that costume together with more care than I put into client presentations. Because nobody in Mark Prescott's family was supposed to know the truth. Nobody was supposed to know that the quiet little girl from the small town pulls in more in a month than their golden son earns in a year of hard work. It was a test. My own private, hard-earned test. After a string of relationships where men looked at me and saw a wallet, or a ladder, or a soft place to land, I had stopped believing the soft things people said. My childhood had taught me that lesson too well, and too young. I stood on that porch with my finger hovering over the doorbell, and through the door, low but clear, I heard a man's voice. "The main thing is she doesn't find out before the wedding." A woman's voice answered, easy and certain. "She won't. Girls like that always believe in love. A few pretty words, a ring on the finger. That's all it takes." My hand came down off the bell. Just drop, like the string holding it up had been cut. I want you to hold on to that sentence, because it cost me everything before it was through. Girls like that always believe in love. I knew, standing there, exactly what I should do. Get back in the cab, drive home to my apartment downtown. My real one, not the modest little place I let Mark think I rented. Block his number and never look back. But running is just losing with your dignity intact. I made myself breathe. I pressed the bell. Footsteps. The lock. And there was Mark, in linen and an easy smile, pulling me into a hug. "There she is. We've been waiting. Sorry." Traffic. I smiled. Inside, every muscle I had was a clenched fist. His mother came out of a living room, full of late sun. Diane Prescott. Beautifully kept, in her 50s, with cool eyes that took inventory of me from the shoes up. Behind her came the father, Walter, a tall man gone soft in the shoulders, with a gaze that had been switched off somewhere a long time ago. "These are for you, Mrs. Prescott." I held out the wildflowers. She took them the way you'd take a fistful of nettles. "How sweet." "Very. Countryside." She turned her cheek slightly, as if the daisies might leave a mark. "Walter, find somewhere for these." He took them without a word and carried them off toward the kitchen like a man carrying out a sentence. They sat me on the edge of the leather sofa. Diane folded her hands, her rings clicking together, and began. "Mark says you're from a small town." A pause for sympathy that wasn't sympathy. "And how do you manage, in the city?" "Everything's so dear." "And what is it you do again?" "I help people make their homes a little more beautiful," I said. Every word of it true. None of it the whole truth. "Interiors. Decorating." She traded a quick glance with her son. "And does that pay?" "Those girls usually scrape along from one job to the next, don't they?" "Now Mark works for a real company. Logistics, that's stability." She leaned in, kind as a knife. "You do understand a marriage needs financial honesty?" "Mom," Mark said weakly, taking my hand. "We just got here." "I'm only getting to know her." "Darling." She turned back to me. "You'll rent, of course? Or did you want to move into the studio apartment Mark's father and I pay for?" I kept my voice low and level, even as something hot turned over in my chest. "We're still talking it over. I'm used to relying on myself, honestly." How admirable. Her eyes narrowed by a degree. "But understand, Claire, a family is no place for ambition. A woman builds the home. She's the steady ground a man stands on. If you marry, how exactly will you fit your little decorating around? Taking care of my son. He needs hot meals. Pressed shirts. His work is very stressful. I imagine we'd share things," I said. "Mark cooks, after all. He made me the most wonderful casserole last week." The room went quiet. Diane swiveled her whole head toward her son. "You stood at a stove?" Mark's ears went red. He let go of my hand. "Once, Mom, it was once. An experiment. I used the frozen kind." He'd been so proud of that casserole. Now, he was apologizing for it like a crime. The questions kept coming all evening, soft and probing, every one of them feeling for the same thing. How much had I saved? Was I planning to borrow? Did I get sick often? By the time dinner came, I understood with total clarity what this family was measuring. Not whether they liked me. Whether I was cheap, dependent, and easy to keep. Dinner did not make it lighter. The table groaned with food, and I couldn't swallow a bite. Walter sat across from me, pushing a salad around his plate in silence. "Pass the salt, Walter," Diane said. He passed the salt. "I think the wedding belongs at the lakeside room," she went on, carving her steak. "Decent crowd there. Claire, can your people cover at least part of the catering? Or will the whole thing fall to us?" "Mom," Mark tried again. "What? It's a fair question." "My mother lived simply," I said, looking right at Diane. "But I've saved a little. I can buy my dress and cover part of the venue." "Well." She sighed like I'd offered her a coupon. "It's something." And then, quietly, Walter spoke. "Diane, maybe let the kids pick where they celebrate. It's their day. You and I signed our papers down at the county clerk and the world kept her turning." Her knife came down against the plate with a crack. "Walter, don't wade in where you're not needed. You don't understand the world anymore." She looked back at her steak. "Their children. They'll choose some diner. And I'll be the one blushing in front of my friends. No, I'll handle all of it myself." I looked at Mark. I waited for him to stand up for himself. For us, for his own father, for anything. He looked at his plate. "Yeah, Mom," he said. "You probably know best." That was the moment a cold finger ran down my spine. Mark had heard his father reduced to nothing at his own table, and to him it sounded like normal. He didn't even flinch. He'd grown up the shadow of a woman who never let go of the leash, and he'd learned to call the leash love. Out on the back terrace that night, with the smell of cut grass and pine coming up off the dark yard, he wrapped his arms around my waist. "Don't mind Mom. She's a little stern, but she loves us. She just worries about my future." I stepped back so I could see his face in the porch light. Mark. When I was at the door, before I rang, I heard something. The smile left him so fast it was like watching a candle pinched. In that half-dark, I could see the muscle jump in his jaw. I heard your mother. And a man's voice saying, "The main thing is, she doesn't find out before the wedding." His color drained. He swallowed. He looked away. You misunderstood. Then help me understand. What am I not supposed to find out? Nothing. His hands started moving, restless. I swear. It was about a surprise. A trip. Mom wanted to surprise us with a honeymoon and she was afraid you'd refuse to go. A trip. I tilted my head. And since when does girls like that believe in love have anything to do with a trip? Claire, please. He was sweating now, in the cool air. Mom just talks funny. She meant you're not after money. That you love me for me. Don't twist it. I love you. I want to marry you. Why would I lie? The thing is, when a man tells the truth, he gets calmer. Mark got faster. He was tying knots in the air. All right, I said softly, hugging my own arms like I was cold. I heard you. I'm tired from the drive. I'll go to bed. And I went inside before he could catch my hand. I didn't sleep. The guest room was beautiful and felt like a hotel room in a city I'd never agreed to visit. I lay under the silk and stared at the ceiling, and the old memories came up uninvited, the way they always do at 3 in the morning. I was 8 when my father packed his suitcases in the hall of our cramped little apartment. I was crying so hard I couldn't get a full breath, and he crouched down and smoothed my hair and said, "I love you so much, sweetheart. You're my princess. I'll come every weekend. We'll go to the park. We'll get ice cream. I promise, I will never leave you. You hear me?" Never. He left that night and he never came back. Not the next weekend, not any weekend. After that, beautiful words stopped giving me butterflies. They gave me a cold hand around the throat instead. My mother changed too. The bright, laughing woman I'd had became quiet and gray and tired down to the bone. She took 2 jobs to feed us. I can still see her at our little kitchen table, fingers rubbed raw from taking in sewing, telling me low and flat, "Remember this, baby, never, you hear me? Never trust anyone all the way. Men's least of all. They'll promise you the moon and the stars, and the second it gets hard, they're gone. You lean on yourself, your own head, your own 2 hands. Learn, work, save. Independence is freedom, and love is a fairy tale for foolish girls." It went all the way into the bone. I did exactly as she said. I worked like the building was on fire. Full scholarship. Drafting other people's projects at 2 in the morning. Any side job I could get. I opened my first studio at 25. By 28, I was independent and successful, and I had built a wall around myself. Out of money and proof, brick by careful brick. And somewhere in all that building, I forgot how it felt to be safe near another human being. With Mark, for a little while, I'd let myself believe the wall could come down. He'd seemed so simple, so warm. He didn't know about my accounts, and he'd loved me poor. That had felt like a miracle. The miracle didn't survive that house. Morning came in bright and clean over the gated lawns. I went down hoping for one quiet cup of coffee. Diane was already in the kitchen, waiting. "Couldn't sleep? Good, come walk with me. The air out here is medicine, not like the city." There was no saying no. 10 minutes later, we were going down the neat paved paths between the tall fences, her heels clicking. "You know why I asked so many questions last night?" She said. "I only want to be sure my son lands in good hands. Raising a real man? That's a life's work. I gave Mark everything. He's a good person," I said. "He's delicate." She stopped and looked at me hard. "A man's spirit is fragile, Claire. You can't give him stress. Home should be his shelter. If work goes badly, his wife listens and soothes and does not bring her own troubles to the door. You have hard days? Of course. Everyone does. Then learn to forget them." She touched her hair. "A man should never be burdened with your problems. You stay sweet, soft, understanding. If he wants a night with the boys, you let him. If he's in a mood, you stay quiet. A wise woman's strength is patience. She smooths the rough edges. Understand me? I felt every cell in me lean back against it. You mean I should dissolve entirely into his life and ignore my own? I mean, a family survives on a woman's patience. Cold now, no honey left. My Walter had a temper once, too. I arranged things so that today we have a perfect home. You steer a man without ever letting him feel steered. You get your way and let him think it was his idea. And if a husband strays, a wife closes her eyes and helps him back up. No scenes. There it was, in plain daylight. She was telling me, directly, that my job would be to swallow whatever I was handed. Neglect, lies, maybe more, anything, as long as the man never felt a draft. The unease I'd carried since the doorbell hardened into certainty. Something here was deeply, quietly wrong. I needed air that wasn't hers. So instead of going inside, I walked around the house toward the garden. And behind a little tool shed I saw a thread of smoke. There was Walter, eating a ham pie, glancing over his shoulder, like a boy who'd snuck out of class. He flinched when he saw me and tried to hide the pastry behind his back. Don't tell Diane? All right? He gave me a sheepish smile. She banned baked goods 10 years ago. Bad for the figure, she says. I came closer. The sight of this grown man hiding behind a shed to eat a pie did something to me. I won't. Don't worry. He nodded, grateful, and took another small bite. Rough morning with her, I'd bet, he said, not looking at me. She likes to teach. We were just talking, I said carefully, about protecting Mark. He laughed, low and sad. Protecting. Right. She protects all of us. Protects us right out of the air to breathe. He looked off past the fence. I don't manage it, you know. I just float. When we married, I fought her. I wanted to start my own business. But Diane, she presses. Quiet, steady. Walter, you'll fail. Walter, that's risky. Walter, listen to me. So I stayed an engineer in her father's firm. She took everything. The money, the choices, the boy. And that's all right with you. When somebody decides everything for you, he said slowly, for a while it's a comfort. You never have to be wrong, she decided. But after enough years you look up and you're gone. You're not a man anymore. You're a function. A wallet, a driver, an audience in her theater. He turned to me, and Mark grew up inside that. He's terrified of choosing anything. Diane tied his shoelaces when he was small, and she's been tying them in his head ever since. You'd be marrying a second mother's job. When a man tells you the truth about himself, it doesn't sound like a complaint. It sounds like a confession. He patted my shoulder and shuffled back toward the house, and left me standing in the garden, understanding. And understanding that Diane's love was a slow strangling that had already finished one man and half finished a second. On the drive back to the city, Mark wouldn't stop talking. See? Went great. Mom's crazy about you. Says you're modest and obedient. A little provincial, but that's a good thing. Not spoiled by the city. Mark, I said, don't you think your mother runs your life a little? He braked at a red and looked at me, honestly baffled. What? Claire, not this again. Mom loves her family. She takes care of us. What's wrong with that? Then, gently, like he was being kind. You're just not used to it. Your childhood was hard. No dad around. That one landed below the belt. I turned to the window. He didn't understand. Or he didn't want to. Some men find it easier to call you broken than to look at the thing you're pointing at. A few days back in the city, I ran one more part of the test. I asked Mark to dinner, an old Mark dinner, and told him I wanted him to meet a good friend of mine. Grace is one of the sharpest people I have ever known. My executive director, a woman, who runs an entire regional division and could buy and sell most of the men who underestimate her. But for that evening, Grace, like me, dressed down. A plain sweater. No jewelry, just an ordinary coworker I supposedly shared the grind with. Mark showed up 20 minutes late, dropped into his chair, gave Grace a nod that didn't reach his eyes, and reached for the menu. Claire, let's just order. I'm starving. They do real steaks here, or just burgers? Mark, this is Grace, I said. She helps me a lot. Charmed? He didn't look up. Claire's told me so much about you. Grace said pleasantly, studying him over the menu. Logistics, isn't it? Hard field. All those roots to hold in your head. It's not a job for the soft, he said, full of himself. Constant pressure. Not like you girls, shuffling papers. Tying little ribbons on your decorating. I nearly choked. Grace just raised one eyebrow. Funny thing, shuffling papers, she said evenly. Some nights it runs 12 hours to keep a client happy. Claire here is brilliant, you know. Real range. Range is nice, Mark waved it off, flagging the waiter. But after the wedding, she won't have to break her back. A woman shouldn't grind herself down. Nature gave her a different job. Oh? Grace folded her arms. And what job is that? The home. Obviously. He said it with the sincerity of a man quoting scripture, which is exactly what he was doing. Comfort. Kids. Long as the dinner's on the table. He touched my hand. Right, babe? I come home wrung out. I need looking after. And the design stuff, that's a little hobby for the soul. There's no real money in it anyway, so at least let it be useful at home. I sat very still and felt the cold spread out under my ribs. Cross the table. Grace gave me one long look that said everything. This is the man you're going to marry? All night, Mark never asked Grace a single thing about her life. He never asked me what I was building or what I dreamed of. He talked about himself, his bosses, his car, how tired he was, and nothing else. Because in his world, there was nothing else worth talking about. That was the night I understood the worst of it. Clean and bright as a struck match. Mark didn't see a person when he looked at me. He saw a pleasant, free addition to his life. A comfortable accessory. Whose whole purpose was to keep him comfortable. Exactly the way his mother had kept him comfortable. When we said goodnight, Grace hugged me hard on the corner and put her mouth to my ear. He's blind, Claire. He doesn't see you. And the part that scares me, he isn't even trying to.
The wedding machine rolled on anyway.
Diane took it all, just like she'd promised, and I floated through it like a guest at someone else's party, paying only the bills she graciously let me pay, hiding the fact that those bills were pocket change to me. 3 weeks out, Mark came over to my apartment. The one he still believed I rented, furnished plain, on purpose. He went to shower and left his phone on the kitchen counter. I was doing dishes when the screen lit up. I do not read people's phones. It's beneath me, but the notification was in letters too big to miss. Nicole, Mark, I can't do this anymore. He yelled at me again. I'm a mess. I miss you so much, miss the way you actually listen. You're the only one who hears me. The sponge dropped out of my hand into the sink. Nicole, the ex. The one he'd left a year and a half before he met me. The one he always mentioned with a little shrug. We ended badly. We don't talk. His phone had no lock. He always said he had nothing to hide. So I opened it, and I read. There was nothing romantic in the strict sense. No declarations, no photos, no hotel plans. But what was there cut just as deep. They wrote almost every single day. She brought him her tears, her new boyfriend, her job, the weather, her whole life. And he played the patient, tender saint. Nick, don't cry. He's an idiot who doesn't deserve you. You're strong. I'm always here if you need to talk. Remember the lake. When you were down and we got through it together? Every ounce of warmth and attention I never got, he was pouring into another woman. With me, he was an exhausted man who needed his dinner. With her, he was a gentle, listening knight. And he hid it, carefully, for months. The bathroom door opened. He came out toweling his hair, saw the phone in my hands, and froze. What are you doing? Sharp. He crossed the room and snatched it. You're going through my phone? A text just came up, I said, from Nicole. The ex you don't talk to. He raked a hand through his wet hair. Claire, reading private messages is a serious violation of... And a secret daily correspondence with your ex 3 weeks before our wedding isn't a violation of mine? I cut in. You said you don't speak. We don't. Not like that. She's going through a hard time. Her mother's in the hospital. She has no one. He started pacing. So you've got a savior complex. Why hide it? If it's friendship, why delete your call log? I can read the dates, Mark. You're talking on the phone. And the history's been wiped. He stopped, breathing hard. Because I knew you'd make a scene. That's why. You're jealous. You see a trap everywhere. You've got that thing from your dad, and now every man's a traitor. I just didn't want to wreck your nerves before the wedding. I rocked back like he'd slapped me, and the tears I'd been holding for a month finally broke loose. Don't you put my father in this. He left honestly, in the open. You hide behind your mother, hide messages from your ex, and you can't even tell me what you want from your own life. Stop. Enough. You're inventing problems where there aren't any. It's friendship. I'm marrying you, not her. I love you. I help her out of old loyalty. That's all. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. He pulled me against his chest. I'd stood there with my arms dead at my sides. And God help me, wasn't this exactly what I'd dreamed of on all those empty evenings? A pair of arms? Please, Claire, he whispered. Let's forget it. I'll block her right now, in front of you. I'll never answer again. Just stop crying. The wedding's so close. We'll be happy. He took the phone, tapped a few times, and held the screen up to me. Nicole, blocked. See? Done. Just you and me. I looked into his eyes. And what I saw there was fear. Fear of losing me. Or maybe just fear of what his mother would do if the wedding fell through. I couldn't tell which. That should have told me everything. The doubts didn't leave after that. They grew. They found details and fed on them. A few days later, we were at a mall picking out a suit for him. I was on a bench by the dressing rooms when a slim brunette came around a rack of shirts, bright and loud. Mark, what a surprise. Mark, half into a shirt, went rigid. I stood. It was Nicole, the ex. The one who was blocked. Deleted, gone forever. Nikki, he stammered, eyes flicking to me. What are you doing here? New wardrobe. She smiled, then ran a slow, looking down sort of look over my clearance dress. Hi there. Mark and I are old friends. I know who you are, I said. What a coincidence, right? She didn't blink. Oh, Mark, your mom says hi. She heard your throat's bothering you. Says take it easy, no cold drinks. Anyway, running. Bye. And she fluttered off in a cloud of sweet perfume, leaving a ringing silence behind her. I watched the color drop out of Mark's face. Your mother sends her love, I said quietly, through your ex-girlfriend. I don't get it either, he said, fumbling his buttons. Mom talks to her sometimes. Nick used to come around the house. Mom got attached. It's just being polite. Mark, she knew your throat was sore. You told 2 people about your throat yesterday. Me and your mother. I held his eyes. So Diane isn't sometimes talking to her. She's reporting on you. Every move. Don't start. He jerked his shoulder. Mom's kind. She can't just be rude to people. Look, I'm asking one thing. I stepped right up to him. Talk to your mother. Tell her to stop this. Tell her it hurts your fiancé. Stand on my side. Once, he looked away, his face twisted into a sulk. I'm not fighting my mother over your jealousy. She's not doing anything wrong. You just need to calm down. Stop hunting for enemies. And there I was, standing in the middle of a department store, suddenly 8 years old again in a bare front hall. My father chose the easy way, too. It was simpler to leave than to fight for us. Mark was doing the same thing in a different shape. Easier to call me paranoid than to take responsibility and protect his own future wife. Fine, Mark. I picked up my purse. Pick the suit yourself. I have work. And I walked out and left him standing there. It didn't make Diane back off. It made her smarter. Open warfare might scare off a convenient bride, so she switched to something softer. 2 days later, my doorbell rang, and there she stood with an enormous food container. And a flawless smile. Claire, sweetheart, I was just passing. Brought you a little something. Mark says you've run yourself ragged with your decorating. Not eating right. That's kind, but I usually just order in if I'm short on time. Order in. She wrinkled her nose. Already passed me into the kitchen. Already opening my refrigerator like it was hers. You can't feed a future husband takeout. Darling, and what are these? Fat-free yogurts. A woman needs real fats, or her skin dries up and she ages before her time. She started plating cabbage rolls. You work too hard. I can see it. Circles under the eyes. You're too independent, always proving something to somebody. A woman should be softer, more yielding. I love my work, I said, leaning in the doorway with my arms crossed. Work comes and goes. She turned, instructive. Family is forever. You need to learn to give in. Mark says you reacted strongly to Nikki. Why be like that? She's his ex-girlfriend, Mrs. Prescott. You think it's normal that she follows us around? Follows. Diane laughed lightly. Veronica's a lonely girl. Yes, I keep up with her. I'm fond of her. A smart woman never gets jealous over the past. Claire. She makes the home so warm a man never wants to look anywhere else. Your scenes are what push him away. Be wiser. Drop the grudge. Smile. That's a woman's power. I looked at this polished, perfect woman and understood she was trying to remodel me down to the studs. Break the will. Make me doubt my own mind. After she left, I sat a long time in my kitchen, with her cabbage rolls going cold, smelling of a home that turned out to be a trap. It was time to end the show. So I called Mark and told him to come downtown. There was something he needed to see. And we rode the glass elevator up to the 18th floor, and the doors opened on my name in the marble. So he kept going. And you already know how his face fell open and then narrowed. Wait, he'd said. How many studios is a chain? Exactly. 4 in the city, I said evenly. 2 in the next state. His tongue ran over his lips. And the monthly profit, roughly. It's an LLC. Right. You're the sole owner. Mark. No, listen. This changes everything. His eyes were lit up with something that had nothing to do with love. We're family. Family means a shared budget. We don't need that little place Mom pays for. We move into your apartment. And, hey, you could bring me in. Commercial director, say. Why should I bust my hump for somebody else's company when we've got our own family business? I said nothing. There was no pride in his face. No awe at a woman who'd built an empire out of nothing. The man I almost married had skipped straight past "Who are you?" and gone directly to "What's it worth and how do I get it?" In every word, not one drop of love. Just the bare, naked arithmetic. We'll talk later, I said. I just wanted you to know the truth. Go home now. I have work. He looked hurt, but he didn't push. Careful. Now, not to upset the rich bride. Sure. I'll call Mom. She's going to lose her mind. He blew me a kiss and was gone. Grace closed her laptop in the corner. Well, she said, nothing left for me to add. The news reached his parents at the speed of sound. The next night, at a restaurant, Diane was a different woman entirely. All the lecturing, all the chill, gone. Claire, darling, she cooed before we'd even sat. Aren't you a dark horse? Brilliant girl. I always told Mark. That one has potential. Real talent. I pushed a salad around my plate. Sick to my stomach with the flattery. The change was too fast and too cheap, and it showed me the exact price of every earlier judgment. The poor girl from nowhere had been a thing to correct and instruct. The rich one became darling overnight. The Prescotts measured human beings in zeros and nothing else. Halfway through dinner, mother and son drifted out to the terrace to argue happily over the menu, which Diane had already rewritten, adding shrimp towers and a chocolate fountain, now that the rich bride was paying. That left me alone at the table with Walter. He turned his water glass in his hand, not meeting my eyes. Claire, he said quietly, I want to say I'm sorry. For what? For all of it. For Diane. For Mark. For this circus. A heavy breath, his voice worn down to nothing. I see how it sickens you. It sickens me too. I've been tired of her games for years. The hypocrisy. But I'm a coward, and I let her raise a son just like her. Just as ready to bend whichever way the money blows. That short, honest sentence shook me harder than everything that came before. Because it widened the whole picture. I used to think abuse was a man's fist or a man shouting. But abuse can be quiet. It can wear pearls. It can live inside a family and eat it from within like rust. And Diane Prescott sat in the center of that web, the spider in a string of perfect lace. The wedding was a month out. The dress hung in its bag. The invitations had gone out. I moved through the days on rails, telling myself it would settle, that love might still win. It was a Thursday, and a meeting fell through. So I left early. I stopped at a red light across from a little Italian place with big front windows, and I happened to glance inside. And my heart skipped a full beat. My hands went to ice on the wheel. At a table near the back sat Mark. The same Mark who had kissed me that morning and said, "Slammed at work today, I'll be late, don't wait up." Across from him sat Nicole, crying, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. And Mark was holding both her hands across the table, gazing into her face like she was the only person in the world. The light turned green. Horn started up behind me. I pulled to the curb on autopilot, put on my hazards, and got out. The whole world felt like it was behind frosted glass. I pushed the heavy door open. A bell jingled and drowned in the soft jazz. I walked to their table. "Good evening." Mark jerked his hands back, so fast he knocked his chair over, scrambling up. "Claire." "What? You're supposed to be at a meeting." "It got cancelled." I looked at the ex. She shrank into herself, eyes down. "Slammed at work, were you? Tricky logistics?" "Claire, please, outside." He grabbed my elbow. I pulled free. "No, we talk right here. How long?" "We're not together," he gasped. "Her mother's in the hospital. She just needed." "And how long have you been needed? Behind my back? A month? 2? He dropped his head. "A few months. But I swear, Claire, nothing happened. Nothing serious. We just talked." "Nothing serious?" I almost laughed. "You lied to me every single day, and you call that nothing serious." I didn't stay for the rest. I turned, walked out, got in my car, and drove home. And somewhere on the way I felt a weight the size of a boulder slide off my chest. 2 hours later, Diane was on my doorstep, face red with fury. Mark had run straight to his mother. "Claire, what is this nonsense? My son says you're canceling a wedding because he had a coffee with Nikki? Have you lost your mind? Guests are invited. Money is spent." I was in the living room, folding Mark's things into a suitcase. "Hello, Mrs. Prescott." "Yes. There's no wedding. You can collect your son." "Don't be ridiculous." She lunged for a shirt in my hands. "Men make mistakes sometimes. It's their nature. I told you. They're not built for one. They just need to feel needed. A wise woman forgives. You close your eyes if you want a marriage. You love him." That was the last drop. I straightened up and looked at her, and she actually took a step back. "A wise woman. Mrs. Prescott is not a doormat who swallows betrayal to keep the word married in front of her name. A wise woman is the one who knows when to walk away from people who don't value her. You broke your husband. You raised a son who lies and hides. But you will not break me." I zipped the suitcase and rolled it into the hall. "Goodbye. Tell Mark he can leave the apartment key with the doorman." When the door shut behind her, I leaned against the cold wall and closed my eyes and breathed. The next day I called every guest and canceled the whole thing. To the world it looked like madness. Word had gotten around about my money by then, and the whispers came thick. Why would a successful girl walk out on such a wonderful boy from such a good family? She got rich and got a big head. You can't be that proud. A woman should forgive. Keep this up, and you'll end up a rich old maid. Beth. An old friend from school called to chirp the same poison down the line. "Claire, come on. Mark's a great guy. He slipped. Who doesn't? And what a family. They say the second you struck it rich, you turned up your nose. You can't be so high and mighty. Forgive him, or you'll die alone with your money." I hung up on those calls. But poison gets in anyway. The old wounds opened. My father's voices came back, and I felt, some nights, like that little girl again, alone in an empty hall against the whole world. It was in exactly that low stretch, when the loneliness was rising up to my chin, that I heard a voice I knew in my favorite coffee shop. "Claire? Claire Bennett, is that you?" It was Mrs. Caldwell. My old high school literature teacher. An elegant woman gone gray now, with kind lines crinkling at the corners of her eyes. We sat down together, and over a cooling cup of tea, without meaning to, I started to cry, and then I told her all of it. Mark, the betrayal, the whispers, the awful, sticky guilt they were all trying to staple onto me. She covered my shaking hand with her warm one. Oh, sweetheart, I still remember your essays, you know. You always wrote about strong women, the ones who don't break, and you grew up into one. I think I broke everything, I whispered. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm too hard. Maybe I should have just put up with it. Put up with what? Lies? Being used? She shook her head. Listen to me. Pride and arrogance are not the same thing, Claire. Arrogance is when you put other people down. Pride is when you won't let them put you down. You poured your whole life into yourself. Your education, your work, your name. And did you do all that just to become a convenient cushion for a weak man and his iron mother? No, a soft smile. People rarely forgive someone else's success, or someone else's freedom. The ones throwing stones are usually the ones who never found the nerve to walk away from their own bad lives. So just keep your back straight. Your life belongs to you, and to nobody else. That conversation was a life ring thrown to a drowning woman. And 2 days later, my phone rang, from a number I didn't know. Hello, Claire, it's Walter, Mark's father. Hello, I said, wary. Is something wrong? A long pause on the line. I could hear him breathing. Plenty's wrong. I'm calling first to see how you are. And second, to say thank you. Thank you for what? For being braver than I ever was. You're leaving? It went off in our house like a bomb. After you canceled the wedding, Diane lit into Mark. Screamed he was worthless. That he'd let a gold mine walk out the door. She didn't even bother to pretend it was about anything but your money. I'd guessed something like that. There's more. His voice trembled. Mark snapped. For the first time in his life, he yelled back at his mother. Told her she'd ruined everything. That she'd run his whole life, told him how to breathe, turned him into a man who can't make a single decision of his own. And Diane started crying, clutching her chest the way she does. And that's when I stepped in. After 30 years, Claire, I didn't stay quiet. I told her the boy was right, that she'd smothered all of us. That I would not be a puppet in her theater one more day. And then, I packed a bag, and I rented a little place across town. I left. He laughed shakily. Don't you feel sorry for me? I should have done it 20 years ago. Diane's alone now, in that big empty house. Mark's in a rented room. He'll barely speak to me, won't speak to her at all. He's hunting for someone to blame. But I believe it'll do him good in the end. A breath. I just wanted you to know, you did right. Be happy. Thank you, Walter, I said. You too. I learned later, through people who knew people, that Mark hit bottom for real. He blamed me, then his mother, then the universe. And only after he lost his job to all the chaos and found himself completely alone did he finally, for the first time in his life, sit down across from a therapist and start the long, hard walk back through his own childhood. As for me, I went back to myself. I traveled. I grew the business. And mostly, slowly, I learned to draw clean lines around what I would and would not allow other people to do to me. Half a year went by. One autumn evening, my company sponsored a benefit for a children's foundation, for kids out of broken and abandoned homes. The room was full. A string quartet played low. I was standing at the tall windows with a glass in my hand when a man came over. Tall in a plain dark suit, with tired eyes that were somehow very warm. Miss Bennett. He put out his hand. Andrew Mercer. I run the foundation. I wanted to thank you personally. Your gift closed the funding for 3 of our kids' surgeries. It's my pleasure. His handshake was steady and easy and warm. I read their stories on your site. They got into me. Hard stories. He stood beside me, looking out at the dark city. Most of those kids grew up sure that nobody wanted them. Parents who left or lied. You know the hardest part of this work? It isn't raising the money. It's getting a child to trust a grown-up against Wobwethin. I felt that go through me, like a struck wire. And how do you do it? He looked at me carefully. We don't promise them the moon. We don't promise them the moon. We don't swear that tomorrow everything will be perfect. We just stay, day after day after day, steady. A pause. Kids who've been betrayed don't believe pretty words. They believe what you actually do. I looked at this man and knew he was speaking from somewhere true. I understand them, I said quietly. I understand them very well. That conversation was the beginning. We started talking. First it was work. Then long walks along the riverfront. Then coffee that went on till midnight. Andrew turned out to be a pediatric surgeon who had given his life to saving children. And the more time I spent near him, the more clearly I could see my own past for what it was. A fear of trust that had grown out of one suitcase in one front hall, a long, long time ago. He never demanded anything. He never crossed a line I'd drawn. He never tried to seem like more than he was. We didn't burn fast. There were no scenes, no jealousy, no drama. There was only honesty, which, it turns out, I had never once had. One night, we were on the floor of my living room working a 1,000-piece puzzle. Snow coming down outside the window. Big surgery tomorrow, he said, turning a piece. I'll be at the hospital till late. So I ordered you dinner from that Thai place you like, set for tomorrow night. So you don't forget to eat after your meetings. I went, still, a little scrap of cardboard pinched between my fingers. Andrew, He looked up and smiled. Why are you like this? My voice came out cracked. Real. You never say big things, you just do them. He set the puzzle piece down, moved closer, and took my face gently in both his hands. Because words are just air moving around, he said. Listen, I love you. And I'm not going to promise we'll never fight, or that every day will be some fairy tale. But I promise you this. I will always be on your side. And if it gets hard, I will not disappear. He didn't promise the moons. He didn't swear it would be perfect. He just said he'd stay. And after a whole life of beautiful men who vanished, that was the only sentence I had ever truly needed to hear. A year later, I was walking through the park when I saw a woman on a bench, looking at the fallen leaves. It took me a second. It was Diane. She'd aged years in months. The perfect hair was gone gray and undone. Her shoulders had caved in. I almost walked past, and then she lifted her head. Claire, I stopped. Hello, Mrs. Prescott. She rose slowly. There was no haughtiness left in her eyes, only a bottomless tiredness. I'm glad I caught you. I've wanted to say something for a long time. I braced for an attack, for one more maneuver. Instead, she lowered her gaze. Forgive me, Claire, I was wrong. About everything. I lost my voice completely. No, let me finish. She pressed on, quiet. My whole life I thought I knew best. I controlled Walter. I smothered Mark. I called it love. And when they finally walked out, I sat alone in that big house and understood that I never saved my family. I dismantled it, piece by piece. I wanted to turn you into an obedient doll because I was terrified of losing my grip. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forget it. I just needed to say it out loud. She wasn't making excuses. She was naming what she'd done. And looking at this broken woman, I felt no anger at all. I forgive you, I said. Take care of yourself. And I walked on down the path. I heard, in time, that Mark was rebuilding things with his father in small, careful steps. That he'd moved into a tiny apartment, found new work, and was trying to build a build a life of his own without checking anyone's face for permission first. I never felt one drop of triumph about it. Only a deep, settled calm. Because justice had come, and it hadn't needed any revenge from me to arrive. Mark lost love to his own cowardice and his own lies. Diane met the loneliness she'd spent a lifetime earning. And Walter, late as it was, finally learned to guard his own borders and pull a full breath of air into his chest. As for me, I got the one thing I'd stopped believing existed. I was in the car outside the hospital waiting for Andrew. On the passenger seat lay a bouquet of wildflowers, daisies and cornflowers, that he'd bought off an old woman in an underpass because he knew how much I'd come to love them. They weren't a disguise anymore. They were just flowers from someone who'd noticed what I liked. The door opened and let in a breath of cold. Andrew dropped into the seat, rubbed his tired eyes, and smiled at me. "Home," I said, and I laid my hand, very gently, over the small round curve of my belly.